Some are born with privilege. Others must carve their path through fire. This is the story of a boy from a forgotten Italian village who defied fate, crossed continents, and became one of the world's leading scientists. In the heart of southern Italy, tucked between rolling hills and vast olive groves, lay a small, nameless village. A place where time stood still, where families lived the same way for generations. He was the only son in a family of 5. Older sisters, a hard-working father, and a mother who carried the weight of their world. Life was simple but painfully hard. His parents worked on a nearby olive farm, their hands rough from years of labor. Their income was barely enough to survive. Education was a distant dream. No one in his family had ever finished school. By the time he turned 10, he had never seen the inside of a classroom. Instead, he spent his days working alongside his parents, carrying heavy baskets of olives under the scorching sun. It was a life with no future, no escape. But fate had other plans. One day, his father collapsed in the fields. The man who had once carried the weight of the family could barely stand. His lungs were failing. Doctors in the village had no answers. Medicine was expensive. The family had no choice but to leave. Eddie, 11 years old, he arrived in Milan, a massive city that felt like a different world. The streets roared with life. People moved fast. Buildings touched the sky. But reality hit hard. The family found a tiny one-room apartment in the outskirts of the city. His mother and sisters took jobs in a textile factory, sewing from dawn to dusk. He too was sent to work. His job? Carrying rolls of fabric from one table to another. His hands ached, his back throbbed, but there was no other choice. And still, his father's condition worsened. Hospitals cost money they didn't have. For 2 years, his life was nothing but work and hospital visits, until one day a single conversation changed everything. One evening, as he delivered fabric, he met a teacher. "You have sharp eyes," the man said, watching him solve a quick math problem in his head. "Why aren't you in school?" The boy laughed bitterly. "I can't read or write." But the teacher saw something else. Potential. Days later, the teacher visited his family. He offered to pay for the boy's education. At 13 years old, he stepped into a school for the first time. It was terrifying. He couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't even hold a pencil properly. He sat in classrooms filled with children much younger than him, but he had something they didn't, a hunger for knowledge. In 1 year, he finished elementary school. By 16, he graduated middle school as the top student. By 18, he entered high school, determined to prove himself. Then came his breakthrough. At 18, he entered an international mathematics competition. Competing against students from prestigious schools, he felt like an outsider. But numbers were his escape. Numbers made sense when life didn't. He won. First place. The prize? A full scholarship to one of America's top universities. For the first time in his life, he had a future. But fate wasn't done testing him. His father's condition worsened. How could he leave? His family depended on him. The decision tormented him. But in one of their final conversations, his father whispered, "Go. Do what I never could. Make sure no one else suffers like I did." With a heavy heart, he left for the United States. Weeks later, his father passed away. He wasn't there to say goodbye, but he made a promise to himself. His father's suffering would not be in vain. At university, he majored in chemistry, determined to understand the disease that stole his father. After 4 years, he graduated top of his class, but his dream was far from over. With the help of a doctor he had met years ago, the same one who treated his father, he secured funding for medical school. He excelled. Every exam, every lecture, every sleepless night was another step toward his true mission. By 33, he had not only become a doctor, but a leading researcher in radiation oncology. By the time he was 33, he had published over 60 research papers and had spoken at numerous global conferences. He wasn't just another doctor, He was one of the youngest and most promising minds in oncology. A boy who once couldn't read had now become a pioneer in cancer treatment. He had won. He could have given up at any stage. He could have let poverty define him. He could have let grief break him, but he didn't. His story became a testament to the power of perseverance, a reminder that knowledge is the greatest weapon against fate. Today, the world knows his name, not as a boy from a forgotten Italian village, not as a factory worker, not as a victim of poverty, but as a man who changed the world. Would you have made the same choices? If you had to leave everything behind to chase a dream, would you? Because sometimes success isn't about talent, it's about sacrifice. Subscribe for more stories.